My family laughed when I told them I had finally been promoted. My brother actually raised his glass and said, "Congratulations. Maybe now you can afford to help me pay off my debt." Everyone laughed. Everyone except me. I smiled, took a sip of water, and said nothing. Because what they didn't know was that my promotion came with one condition. I had been ordered to review every major account connected to my family. And my brother's name was at the top of the list. My name is Natalie Carter. I'm 31 years old, and for most of my life, my family treated my success like something they were entitled to. I was the responsible daughter. My younger brother, Ethan, was the one everyone protected. When I got scholarships, my parents said I was lucky. When Ethan bought an expensive car he couldn't afford, Dad called it an investment. When I worked weekends to pay my own bills, Mom told relatives how independent I was. When Ethan lost his job, everyone rushed to help him. I had spent years pretending it didn't hurt. Then came the night I finally got promoted. I worked for one of the largest private investment firms in Chicago. After 6 years of working my way up from an entry-level analyst, I was finally promoted to Director of Compliance. It was a huge deal. My boss had personally told me that the position would put me in charge of reviewing several major corporate accounts. I was proud, so I invited my parents and Ethan to dinner. I thought, just once, they might actually celebrate me. Instead, Dad barely looked up from his menu. Mom said, "That's nice, sweetheart." And Ethan laughed. "Director of Compliance," he said. "Sounds like a fancy way of saying you tell people what they can't do." I forced a smile. Then Ethan leaned back in his chair. "So, since you're making more money now, maybe you can help me with my business loan." I looked at him. "What business loan?" He laughed. "The restaurant equipment loan. Remember?" "No." His smile disappeared. Dad immediately stepped in. "It's nothing serious. Ethan just needs a little help getting through the next few months." "How much?" Mom answered. "About $80,000. I nearly dropped my fork. "80,000? Ethan shrugged. "You have the money." That sentence stayed with me. Not, "Would you help?" Not, "Can we talk?" Just, "You have the money." As if everything I earned automatically belonged to him. I placed my fork down. "I can't do that." The table went silent. Dad frowned. "Why not?" "Because I don't want to." Mom's face tightened. "Natalie, we're family." I looked around the table. "I know." And for the first time, I didn't feel guilty saying no. The next morning, I arrived at work and found an email waiting for me. Subject, Priority Account Review. My new boss, Victoria Hayes, wanted me in her office. I walked in expecting a routine meeting. Instead, she closed the door. "Natalie, congratulations again on the promotion." "Thank you." She slid a folder across the desk. "We need you to take over the Carter Hospitality account." I froze. Carter Hospitality. My brother's company. I opened the folder. Inside were financial statements, loan agreements, expense reports, and payment records. Something immediately looked wrong. There were large transfers leaving the company every month. Payments to an outside consulting company. A company I had never heard of. I looked at Victoria. "Who owns this consulting firm?" "We're still verifying that." I turned another page. Then I saw an address. My stomach dropped. It was my parents' home address. I looked up. "Why is my family's address here?" Victoria's expression became serious. "We don't know yet." I took the folder home that evening. I couldn't stop thinking about it. My brother had told everyone his restaurant was struggling because business was slow. But the documents showed something completely different. Money wasn't disappearing because of the restaurant. Someone was moving it somewhere else. And the transfers had started nearly 2 years earlier. 2 years. That was when Ethan had first asked Dad for help launching the business. The next morning, I went back to Victoria. "I need to disclose something." She nodded. I explained my relationship to Ethan. She immediately removed me from the investigation. For a moment, I thought that was the end of it. Then Victoria said something I wasn't expecting. "We're assigning an independent auditor." "Okay. And Natalie?" "Yes. You should know that this account was already flagged before your promotion." My heart sank. "Why?" because someone submitted documentation suggesting that company funds may have been used for personal expenses. I knew exactly who that meant, but I still couldn't believe it. That evening, Mom called me. "Natalie, honey, your father and I want to invite you over Sunday." "Why?" "We're having a family dinner." I almost laughed. "You haven't had a family dinner in months. Don't be difficult." I said nothing. Then she added, "Ethan is going to make an announcement." My stomach tightened. "What kind of announcement?" "You'll see." Sunday came. When I arrived at my parents' house, everyone was already there. Dad, Mom, Ethan, even my aunt and uncle. Ethan stood at the head of the table with a bottle of champagne. "I have exciting news," he announced. He told everyone he was expanding his restaurant into a second location. Everyone applauded. Then Dad looked at me. "And Natalie is going to help." I nearly choked. "What?" Ethan smiled. "Dad told everyone about your promotion. We figured you'd want to invest." I stared at him. "You figured wrong." His smile faded. Mom whispered, "Don't embarrass us." I looked at her. "I'm not the one embarrassing anyone." Ethan's face turned red. "You think you're better than us now?" "No." "Then prove it." "How?" "Give me the 80,000. The room became completely silent. I stood up. "No." Dad slammed his hand on the table. "You selfish girl." I stared at him. "I worked for everything I have. We're your family. And I'm still your daughter when I say no." Ethan suddenly laughed. "You know what? Keep your money." He picked up his glass. "We'll find another investor." I looked at him carefully. "Maybe you should." I left. 3 days later, the independent audit was completed. Victoria called me into her office. The findings were devastating. The consulting company receiving the monthly payments was not an outside firm. It was owned by a relative of Ethan's. And hundreds of thousands of dollars had been transferred from the restaurant into that company. Then came the bigger discovery. Some of those funds had been used to pay my parents' personal expenses, mortgage payments, credit card bills, luxury vacations, even Ethan's car. My entire family had been living partly on money that wasn't supposed to leave the business. But there was one final document. A loan application. Ethan had listed me as a financial reference without my permission. And worse, he had falsely claimed that I had agreed to invest in his expansion. That was the moment everything changed. The company terminated the account relationship. The lender froze additional funding. And the restaurant expansion was immediately canceled. But I wasn't finished. I requested one meeting with my parents and Ethan. We met in a quiet conference room. They arrived angry. I arrived calm. Ethan immediately pointed at me. "You destroyed my business." I shook my head. "No, you did." Dad stood up. "You're our daughter. You were supposed to protect your brother." I looked at him. Protect him from what? He didn't answer. I placed the audit summary on the table. "From consequences?" Mom started crying. "Natalie, please." I looked at her. "You told me I was selfish for refusing to give Ethan $80,000. I paused. "Now I understand why you wanted that money so badly." Ethan wouldn't look at me. Dad finally sat down. Then I said the words I had been afraid to say my entire life. I am done being the responsible child who cleans up everyone's mistakes. Mom whispered my name, but I continued. "I won't pay your bills. I won't rescue Ethan's business. I won't sign anything for him. And I won't let anyone use my name to make their financial problems disappear." Ethan finally looked up. "You'd really let your own brother fail?" I answered quietly. "I won't let you fail." He looked confused. "I'll let you face what you created." Nobody spoke. I stood up and walked toward the door. Then Dad said something that stopped me. "We were proud of you." I turned around. "No, Dad." His eyes filled with tears. "You were proud of what I could do for you." That sentence ended the conversation. 6 months later, Ethan's restaurant survived, but only after he sold his second location plans, repaid part of the money, and took responsibility for the remaining debts. My parents downsized their house. They stopped asking me for money. And Ethan finally learned to manage his business without treating me like an emergency bank account. As for me, I received another promotion. My new office was on the top floor of the building, overlooking downtown Chicago. The day I moved in, Victoria handed me the keys. "You earned this," she said. I placed the keys on my desk. Then I looked at the nameplate on the door. Natalie Carter, Director of Compliance. I took a photo. Not to make my family jealous. Not to prove anything. Just because I wanted to remember the moment. I sent it to the people who had genuinely supported me throughout the years. My old mentor. My closest friends. And, surprisingly, my mother. She replied several hours later. "I finally understand." I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed, "I hope you do. Nothing more." Because I had finally learned that setting a boundary isn't cruelty. Sometimes it's the first honest thing you can do for yourself. My family thought my promotion meant I had more money to give them. They never imagined it would put me in the exact position where I could see the truth. And the funniest part? The $80,000 they demanded from me was never the thing that changed their lives. The word no did. If you've ever been treated like the responsible one in your family while someone else was constantly rescued, tell me your story in the comments. And tell me what city you're watching from. If you enjoyed Natalie's story, subscribe for the next family drama story, because sometimes the person everyone takes for granted is the one person they should never have underestimated.